Alright, so hello everyone. So today I will be giving you a presentation on the topic contextual UI. So before we get into it, let us realize the importance of a user interface, how it affects the user experience. Now, as we know, that user experience is a major thing to keep in mind while creating your website, app, or any application. We need to understand that as the technology advances, the art of UI also changes. And so we need to update accordingly. And this is where contextual UI comes in. So now let us look into what contextual UI really is. And in simple words, I will just say it is the art of simply design that fits in the requirement of the target users with respect to the context that we are trying to deliver, no matter how an aesthetic might be. Now, even though you know the definition right now, you might be questioning what it really is. So you can look below is a really good example as to how contextual aware really affects us. So simply just changing the position of something as simple as an add item button, you can see there's a visible change in the UI, and that drastically changes the user experience. The one on the left feels more familiar for a food selling ad than the one on the right. And so the user would rather want to experience the one on the left than the right. Now that might have given you a small idea as to where we need to apply contextual UI, and we will study more about it in the later slides. So first things first, we're talking about the personality of an UI. Now, personality is something that I would say is rather abstract and can be explained as the feel that you get from a UI at the first glance. So, for example, here in our example, we have the Visa web page, and it feels rather professional, and that is how it should be. Like if you are visiting a banking website, you would want that it feels rather secure and professional. So when you want that secure and professionalism, that is where you are defining the personality that you would expect from a banking website. And similarly, when you are trying to visit something like a tourism website, you might want it to be rather more playful and full with visuals rather than just keeping it professional. And in the below example as well, we can see the use of professional lines such as Visa, a trusted leader in digital payments, feels a rather professional line than a casual one. And we will know more about it later in our slides. Other than that, we see the emphasis on the facts by keeping it in the attention in the next image right next to it, which shows the credibility of the visa. Now, furthermore, I have a few more examples in the next slide, starting with the beauty product webpage. Now, here, as you can see, the primary theme here is the color pink. And if you realize in the earlier slide, let me just, yeah. So here, as you can see, we use the color blue, which imparted a rather professional and secure feel. Here you will feel rather relaxed and familiar with it, or rather more secure as well, but relaxed, not professional. Anyway, so other than that, we see that we have a professional title right above it, explore the new beauty trends for the season, and so on. And down below, we see how they have used ingredients as a subtitle to show to show how effective their beauty product is. Other than that, use of few visuals and more about text and comments, as you can see in the next image. So that sums up as to how they have designed their beautiful web page. Now, to contrast this UI design, I would like to show you yet another design which is rather more playful than just relaxed or professional, which would be right here. And here, as you can see, we have a design summit web page, which feels a lot more playful than our other two examples. So here, as you can see, the relative importance has been given to the title creative brilliance, and that is where it must be because we are trying to gather users for a design summit. Other than that, we see the use of color white, not white, sorry, yellow, which feels rather more bright and playful as compared to pink or blue. And other than that, we see down below, welcome to the greatest designers conference 2024. Here we see a change in the font color, and that has been done so that the emphasis comes on designers conference 2024, which is the main attention you would want other than the title, which is creative brilliance. Other than that, in the background we see the next part, which is the schedule. Even in schedule we have used the color pink to highlight the titles of the events in the schedule and so on. So with that, I hope you would have a slight idea about how the personalities of UI work. Now, moving on, let us talk about yet another important thing that designs this whole personality, which would be hierarchy. Now, if you ask me what a hierarchy is, let us assume any UI design, a web page maybe for so, or an app, all the elements that have been designed and kept on a specific page have a relation with each other. For example, let us say even the previous slide, let me just go back for a while. Here, as you can see, this is the title, this is the secondary text, this is the subtext. So here we see that everything has a different role, and that is what visual hierarchy talks about. So it is about how we need to make the elements appear so that we can impart our message accordingly and make it an AEI feel rather more designed. For example, like I told you before, a title needs to be bold and big, or the skin needs to be rather short, and so on. And that is, other than that, we have a few more factors which we will talk about later. But other than that, we can just take a peek inside the visual hierarchy table where you can basically format your UI according to it to impart the attention from low visibility to high visibility. Basically, we use the low visibility to put anything behind the scenes, or rather put it in background, while if you want something to be rather at front, we make it highly visible. For example, let me take one such as the white space. So let us say we have an image that we want it to be centered on our web page. So you would want lots of white space, but enough to give it that primary attention. But let us say if we have text surrounding it, which basically means no white space is around it, then that would feel rather crowded and behind the scene than at the center of the show where we want it actually. And that we have position, scale, and color is something we'll talk about later in the slides. So let's just move ahead and talk about one example that I have right here. As you can see here, this web page has a lot of data on possibly stocks. You can see here, you cannot just, if I ask you to summarize this web page in one glance, then I don't think so anyone would be able to do it. And that is why you will realize the importance of hierarchy by, let me just switch it. Now, as you see here, the difference is visibly shown here. Now, if I ask you that, tell me how you can you summarize this page, you will just simply look at the total balance, the investments, and the cash. And other than you have the holdings or whatever the um, rest of the data that there is, but the main data appears to be on the main screen where we want it according to a hierarchy. While if let me just go back, and you cannot just summarize it at first glance, while here you can, and that is the magic of hierarchy. So let us just move on and talk about the font size. The font size plays a major role in how it comes off in your UI. Let us say we are making a business website or a banking website. You would want a more professional, bold, and a rather corporated, or not corporated, but rather a more suited theme that imparts a serious look, which we can see with the serif typeface in this design right here, as compared to other something like Comic Sans, which feels rather more playful, and that we do according to the context that we want to impart. So, like I told you before, here in the example, we did it for a banking website, while below we did it for something playful rather. Now, moving on. Now we talk about the font size, which is one of the major things that we need to do when we are designing our hierarchy. As you can see here in the below examples as well, even though the title is big and the subtext is short, we do not feel that it is rather more crowded, doesn't it? So, while in the next example, you can clearly differentiate between the title and the subtext, and that is what our main goal here is, to make the primary content just big enough so that it feels the perfect title rather than crowded. Now, other than that, we have used the font weight and color here by making it bold in the other example, as well as one in the per person, one in the down below, where we have mentioned the price, as there we would want that the person would focus on the price rather than reviews or anything else. So, moving on, we have yet more example. So here, as you can see, if you think subtly, then you will see that in the subtext, which is right here, has been made slightly gray to put it rather behind the scenes and to show it less value as compared to this, which we would want the person to see. And other than that, all things are the same, the font weight or font size. So that concludes us for the font change for choice and changes. Now moving on, we talk about other factors such as color. Color is one of the really major factors, and we saw it earlier in our font as well. So here, even though we have color styles such as hex and RGB, but the one of the best ones that we can use is itself, which stands for hue, saturation, and lightning. Now, how you can use HSL? Well, basically, you need to understand that what is the use of each of the parameter that we have in this color grid. So hue, as you can see here, is basically to decide the base color that you want to impart. You can use, if you want to use red, you can use 0 degree, if green then 90, and so on. You can just refer to this color cycle and make changes accordingly. Now, other than that, we have saturation, and saturation basically defines the opacity of any color schema. As you can see here, on 0%, saturation it feels dull or rather transparent, while on the 100% it feels more opaque. So that is what saturation does, and keep in mind when you are trying to change it. Other than that, we have the lightning, which focuses on the brightness of your color that you wish to choose. Let's say you have used 0%, then it becomes totally dark, while on 100% it becomes fully white. So while adjusting all these three values, you can use HSL perfectly and make changes accordingly. Now moving on, we compare that we have yet another color grid which is hue, saturation, and brightness. So the difference here is basically of lightness and brightness, but they both are different. As you can see right here, the same color which appears here is a rather different has a rather different position when it comes to HSL plus. HSB is rather more suited when you are trying to design something. For let's say you are designing something in Figma, then you can use HSB if you want to. But when you are trying to design your official UI that you want to use in your app on your front end, then try to stick to HSL. And moving on, now comes the color palette. So for the color palette, the initial rule is just basically to follow 70-20-10 rule, where 70% dominates primary color, 20% goes to secondary, and 10% for the accent colors. And the accent colors basically mean the background colors for the background dimension. Primary, secondary are sub-justified, but still we can define it as primary, which is given the most attention, then comes the secondary, and then accent. And then in the below examples, you may see the use of colors yellow and white. Yellow color, as you can see right here, induces a feeling of warning, and that is the intention by the UI designer right there. Other than that, we have the color green, which feels a little more secure. And as you can see right there, as we have a plus sign for a positive gain, we have used the color green right there. Now other than that, we have some tips here if you want to enhance your color. Now one of the main factors which you can use the saturation, and you will know why we need to do that by where when you are trying to move your lightness away. We are trying to play with your lightness, then try to increase your saturation, because if you greatly decrease the saturation, it changes the whole current in a nutshell. So you may experiment with it yourself. Other than that, rotating hue is one of the most interesting techniques here you can use to actually enhance color. So as you can see in this example, in the first image we have the hue 210 for both the images, but you can see the wonders it did when we just simply change the hue of the top image to 190, and that is what rotating hue can do. Other than that, we have here OKLCH, which is basically a color model that aligns with human perception. But in a nutshell, if you want to ask me what it really does, is that it has more parameters than your original HSL and focuses on the brightness part aspect of the UI. And for example, I would just say that, let us say we have two colors, yellow and blue. Which one of two might feel more brighter to you? And if you ask me, the answer of most of the users would be yellow, even though the lightness of both might be the same, but still, yellow will still feel more brighter, and that is due to the perceivedness personality of the human eye. So, keeping that in mind, use this color model accordingly. Now, moving further, we have the use of language. Now, language also plays an important part, which we talked about earlier. And here as well, we see that in this example, thank you, Mr. Benson, to confirm your identity. Please provide a phone number. We feel rather more professional when someone is approaching us with such a line. But as you can see below, we have a rather contrasting example where it says, sweet, thanks, Steve. Just to make sure this is really you, where can we send you a verification code? That feels a little more familiar and that feels more casual than the more professional part. So that is what the language really does and highly changes the feel of your UI. Now, and that would be it. With that, I wrap up. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And thank you.